I never thought I would become the man who lies awake at night, plotting revenge on the woman he loves. But here I am. It started on a Tuesday evening like any other. I drove home from the auto shop with the windows down, the scent of engine oil still clinging to my hands and clothes. Another 10-hour shift, another handful of calluses on my palms. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed my wife Megan's car was already there. Usually she wouldn't beat me home. Inside, the house was unsettlingly quiet. Maybe she's napping, I thought. The smell of something that had been cooked and left too long on the stove hung in the air. On the kitchen counter, I found a note in Megan's looping cursive. Had to stay late at work. Dinner's in the pot, back by 9. Love you. I frowned, checking the time. It was almost 9 already, and the food in the pot was cold. Megan worked as a project coordinator at a marketing firm, and lately, staying late had become her mantra. Deadlines, client meetings, last-minute crises, she always had an excuse. At first, I believed it. I know how demanding bosses can be. But a knot of worry tightened in my gut as I reheated the stew alone in the microwave. She breezed in around 9:30, looking a little too put together for someone coming off a long workday. Her blonde hair was freshly brushed and she wore lipstick. Megan rarely bothered with makeup for the office, or so I thought. I forced a smile and asked, "Long day, huh?" She startled slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to still be up. "Oh, yeah. Exhausting," she replied, avoiding my eyes. She set down her purse and keys. I noticed her phone clutched tightly in her hand, not casually tossed on the entryway table like usual. "You okay? You seem on edge," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I'm fine. Just work drama," she said quickly. "I'm gonna grab a shower. I feel gross." Before I could say another word, she disappeared into the bathroom, phone still in hand. That was the first time I felt it. Something was off. A strange cocktail of unease and dread swirled in my stomach. Why did she need her phone in the bathroom to shower? Why had she gotten dressed up just to work late? I ate my reheated dinner alone at the kitchen island, ears tuned to the rush of water from the shower. My mind replayed the past few weeks. Her staying late more often, her chuckling at text messages and then saying, "Just a funny meme from Jenna," when I asked. The new lingerie I found in a shopping bag. She claimed it was for me, but I hadn't seen it since. The times she pulled away from my kisses with flimsy excuses about being tired. Individually, I might have brushed these off. Together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. When she emerged from the shower, damp and wrapped in a towel, her phone was nowhere in sight, probably stashed in her purse or under a pillow. She pecked my cheek, muttered something about an early meeting tomorrow, and went straight to bed. I followed, lying beside her in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazy circles. Megan's breathing evened out, but mine wouldn't. My heart thudded in my chest. "Stop imagining things," I scolded myself. Megan had always been a bit impulsive and scatterbrained, but she wasn't a bad person. We'd been married 5 years, together for 7. We'd had our fights, money issues, her spur-of-the-moment spending sprees, my long hours at the garage, but we always found our way back. She'd supported me when I chose my blue-collar career over college. I supported her through job changes and wild hobbies she'd pick up and drop on a whim. Through it all, I thought our bond was unshakable. I guess no one ever thinks they're the husband whose wife cheats. No one wants to believe the person they share a bed with would betray them. So I pushed down my suspicion that night and told myself tomorrow would be better. But the uneasy feeling didn't let up. Over the next week, I started noticing more little things. Megan set her phone to silent around me and never left it unattended. She began dressing nicer for work, form-fitting dresses, a new perfume I'd never smelled on her before. When I commented playfully, "You're looking fancy these days," she just shrugged and said, "Trying to dress for the job I want, you know." One evening, she casually mentioned a work friend named Derek, someone I'd never heard of. Derek from accounting got promoted, so a bunch of us went out for drinks after work, she said over dinner, not quite meeting my eyes. "Oh? Anyone I've met?" I tried to sound neutral, swirling my fork in my plate. "I don't think so," she replied lightly. "He's new, joined a few months ago." I left it at that, but the name Derek drilled into my mind. A few days later, fate, or maybe careless planning on Megan's part, handed me the proof I dreaded. It was a Friday night. Megan had told me in the morning she planned to grab dinner with a couple of girlfriends after work. "It's been forever since I had a girls' night," she'd said brightly. Something about her too bright tone and darting eyes made me uneasy. That evening, I got home to an empty house again. By 8 p.m., Megan still hadn't texted or called. I tried to distract myself by watching a baseball game on TV, but I couldn't focus. By 8:30, I still hadn't heard from her. A gut feeling gnawed at me, so I grabbed my keys and decided to drive toward downtown and see if I could spot her. A hunch led me to La Trattoria, our favorite Italian restaurant. Sure enough, through the soft glow of the patio's string lights, I spotted Megan immediately. She was seated at an outdoor table, laughing at something, her golden hair catching the light. Across from her was a man in a crisp shirt, leaning in far closer than any mere coworker would. His hand rested on her forearm in an all-too-familiar way. My stomach lurched. I parked half a block away and approached on foot, heart hammering in my ears. The summer night air was warm, but I was shivering. As I neared the restaurant's patio, I kept to the shadows of a nearby tree and watched. It was like a scene from some romantic movie, only it was my wife in the starring role, with another man. They were sharing a dessert, 2 spoons in one dish, clearly enjoying themselves. I saw Megan playfully feed him a bite of tiramisu, and he reached up to wipe a crumb off her lip with his thumb. She caught his hand and kissed his fingertips with a flirtatious smile. That was it. All doubt evaporated, and a roaring filled my head. I stepped forward off the curb, ready to march over and confront them right then and there. My hands were balled into fists at my sides. I was so angry I could taste it, metallic on my tongue. But 10 feet from their table, I stopped. Some last shred of sanity yanked back on the reins. They hadn't seen me. They were utterly absorbed in each other. If I burst in now and caused a scene, what then? I'd get the momentary satisfaction of seeing their faces crack with guilt and shock. But after that, Megan would know I knew. She'd likely cry and apologize or maybe get defensive. The man, Derek, I presumed, might slip away or worse, confront me, turning it into a public brawl. In any case, they'd both clam up. The affair would retreat underground, harder to catch the next time. I'd be left with nothing but their denials or hollow apologies, and no proof for what might come next. I realized I needed proof. Hard proof, not just my word against theirs. If I wanted any real justice from this, I had to be smart. This moment, gut-wrenching as it was, had to be the beginning, not the climax. Jaw tight and eyes stinging, I forced myself to step back into the darkness. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone. From that distance, the photos wouldn't be great, but I zoomed in and snapped several shots of them at the table. Megan's unmistakable profile, smiling at the man across from her, his hand on hers, their closeness under the patio lights. The images came out grainy, but they were damning enough for me. As the couple requested the check and rose to leave, I melted farther into the shadows. They walked out of the restaurant arm in arm. I hung back and watched them stroll down the sidewalk, Derek's hand pressed to the small of her back in that intimate way that used to be my habit. My blood boiled, but I kept my distance. They eventually stopped by a parked car, his presumably, and I watched in silent devastation as he drew her in for a deep kiss under a street lamp. I snapped one last photo of their lips locked, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't follow them after that. I had seen more than enough. As Derek opened the passenger door for her and they drove off, I was left standing on that quiet street, my world crashing down around me. I walked back to my truck on numb legs. Once inside, I sat staring at nothing, my mind a storm of rage, hurt, and disbelief, my vision blurred with tears that I stubbornly tried to blink away. How could she do this? How could the woman who'd vowed to love me be out there giving her love to someone else? I drove aimlessly for a while, not ready to go home. Eventually, I found myself in an empty parking lot behind an old closed-down supermarket. I killed the engine, and in the darkness and silence, I finally lost it. I screamed at the top of my lungs inside the cab, a raw, animal sound of pain. I pounded the steering wheel until my palms were sore, cursing both of them in a stream of furious words no one else could hear. And I cried, ugly, racking sobs that tore out of me in a way I hadn't cried since I was a kid. At some point, I slumped back in the seat, drained and cold. I'm not sure how long I sat there watching the neon liquor sign from a distant strip mall blink red and blue. Eventually, I wiped my face on my sleeve and unlocked my phone with shaky fingers. The photos I'd taken glowed up at me, each one a knife to the heart. But with each stab of pain, something else grew inside me, anger. Not the wild, impulsive anger that had almost driven me to confront them at the restaurant, but a cold, focused fury. In that moment, I swore to myself I wouldn't be the pathetic, blindsided husband everyone pitied. I wouldn't let them destroy me. I would make them pay. By the time I finally headed home well past midnight, my tears had dried. In their place was the outline of a plan. I got home around 1 a.m. The house was dark. Before I'd driven off from the restaurant earlier, I managed to text Megan something to cover my absence. Helping Dave with his truck. Might be late, don't wait up. She'd replied, okay, be safe. It stung that she hadn't even questioned it. Maybe because it gave her free rein to spend her evening with him. Sure enough, when I quietly let myself in, Megan was already in bed. The bedroom was nearly pitch black, save for the faint glow of her phone charging on the nightstand. I stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to her slow, steady breathing. I wondered bitterly if she was dreaming of him. Pushing the thought aside, I crept to my side of the bed. As I pulled back the covers, she stirred. You okay? She mumbled sleepily. It's late. How's Dave? Yeah, I'm fine. His truck's all set now, I whispered, turning away so she wouldn't see the turmoil on my face. Go back to sleep, Meg. She was out again in seconds. I lay there rigidly on the very edge of the mattress, careful not to let our bodies touch. My mind was miles away anyway, retracing the awful events of the night and, unbelievably, starting to map out what came next. By morning, I'd barely snagged 2 hours of fitful sleep. Megan woke up oblivious to my inner wreckage. She hummed in the shower. I stared at the ceiling, eyes gritty and red, formulating step 1 of my plan. If I was going to confront this betrayal, I needed backup, legal backup. That Saturday, I made an excuse that I had to help a friend with a home renovation project. In reality, I drove downtown to a law office I'd looked up at dawn while Megan was still asleep. A buddy of mine from high school had gone through a nasty divorce last year, and he'd once mentioned the attorney he used. I remembered the name, found the firm's website, and by some stroke of luck, they offered Saturday consultations by appointment. I got one for noon. The office was quiet, almost empty. I sat in a leather chair in a small conference room, rubbing my sweaty palms on my jeans. I probably looked like hell, rumpled shirt, bloodshot eyes, the haunted look of a man whose life had just imploded. After a few minutes, an attorney, Miss Patel, entered with a notepad and a sympathetic smile. We shook hands and I introduced myself, using only my first name, since I wasn't ready for the world to know yet. As soon as we sat down, the story spilled out of me in a torrent. The late nights, the gut feelings, the photo my friend sent. I showed her the grainy picture of Megan and Derek at the restaurant, and what I'd witnessed myself. Miss Patel listened without interruption, her face professionally neutral, but eyes showing a glint of concern. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said softly when I finally finished. "It's devastating. But you did the right thing by coming to a lawyer before taking action." I swallowed the lump in my throat. My voice was raw. I don't want to just confront her and let her lie her way out of it. I want a divorce, and I don't want her to get away with this. We don't have kids, thank God. But we do have a house, bank accounts. And my voice cracked, despite my resolve. I want them to face consequences. Miss Patel nodded, folding her hands on the table. "All right. First, do not tip your wife off that you know. Continue as if everything is normal while we prepare now. From a legal standpoint, since there are no children, the main issues will be division of assets and possibly alimony. This state is a no-fault divorce state, meaning her infidelity won't automatically entitle you to a larger share in court. However," she added as my face fell, "evidence of an affair can still give us leverage in a settlement. If Megan used marital funds on this affair, gifts, trips, hotel stays, that's considered marital waste, and you can argue to recoup that in the asset split. And a judge could factor in egregious behavior when deciding alimony. In short, proof of adultery puts you in a stronger position to negotiate terms favorably." A grim satisfaction flickered inside me. Good. I wanted that leverage. "So I need evidence of what they've been doing, and of any money she spent on him," I summarized. "Exactly." She gave me a shrewd look. "Do you have access to phone records or financial statements that might show unusual activity?" I nodded. "We have joint bank and credit accounts. I handle most of the bills. I haven't looked closely for anything odd, but I will. And our phone plan is shared. I can pull up logs online, see if she's been calling or texting one number a lot." "Good. Check for that. Also," she slid a business card across the table. "A private investigator. We often work with him on cases like this. He can legally track and document your wife's meetups with this man. Photos, times, places. It could help immensely to have clear evidence." I stared at the card. Hiring a PI to tail Megan? It felt so surreal and yet perversely satisfying. "All right," I said slowly. "I'll do it." Miss Patel went on to advise me about protecting myself financially in the interim. On her advice, I would withdraw half of the funds from our joint accounts into a new account in my name, so Megan couldn't secretly drain everything if she sensed something. Redirect my paycheck to that new account, and change the passwords on any financial logins we shared. "Don't go overboard and hide money," she warned. Just secure what is rightfully yours, and keep records of everything. I left her office feeling marginally better, like I had a shield and sword to wield now. My heart was still shattered, but at least I had a plan of attack. Over the next week, I methodically set her advice into motion. On Monday during lunch break, I slipped out to the bank. With a mix of heartbreak and determination, I withdrew roughly half of our joint savings and deposited it into a brand new account only I could access. I left the rest alone. I wasn't out to rob Megan, just to protect myself. I also quietly rerouted my upcoming direct paychecks to that new account. If she noticed the missing money or paycheck, I'd come up with an excuse. But she rarely monitored the accounts, leaving that boring stuff to me. At night, while Megan slept, I carefully combed through our financial records. By the glow of a desk lamp in the spare room, I pored over bank statements and credit card bills. My hands trembled anew as I spotted charges that made my blood boil. A $200 charge at a day spa last month. She'd never mentioned a spa day to me. A series of pricey restaurant bills that didn't align with any dates I took her on. She had explained those away as client dinners. And a hotel charge on a night she'd claimed to be working late. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. It looked like they weren't just having cozy dinners. If that hotel stay was what I thought it was, she had been bringing him to our town, practically under my nose. The phone records were even more damning. Late at night, using the online portal, I pulled up Megan's call and text logs. One number popped up over and over, often at odd hours or during her lunch breaks. I didn't recognize it. With a bitter taste in my mouth, I copied it down and did a quick reverse lookup. It came back with Derek's full name. Of course, he'd been calling and texting her constantly, cross-referencing dates. I noted many of those long calls happened on nights I worked late or went bowling with friends. They'd planned their trysts well. Each new discovery was like pouring salt on an open wound. But strangely, focusing on the logistics of the betrayal helped channel my pain into purpose. Instead of spiraling into despair, I forced myself to think like a detective gathering evidence. It gave me a sense of control in an otherwise uncontrollable situation. Meanwhile, I had to act normal around Megan. That was the hardest part. Pretending I didn't know, pretending to still be the loving, clueless husband, when all I wanted was to rage at her or collapse in tears. God, it was brutal. But I did it. Each morning I put on a convincing mask. I'd chat about little things, force a smile, even give her a quick kiss before leaving for work, though it made my skin crawl now. If I withdrew or seemed suspicious, she might grow cautious. So I played my part. If anything, she seemed more relaxed around me than she had in weeks. Perhaps she thought she'd gotten away with it. I imagined my occasional forced smiles or weary nods she took as me being tired from work, not suspicious of her. Once I caught her looking at me with a slight frown as I stared off in thought. I snapped out of it and cracked a lame joke about a tough customer at work. She let it go. Inside, I felt sick. Our entire marriage had become a performance, and only I knew it. On Tuesday, I hired the private investigator Miss Patel recommended, a no-nonsense guy named Dan. I gave him all the details, Megan's photo, her work schedule, Derek's name and workplace, the patterns I'd observed, like how she often worked late on Thursdays or Fridays. Dan nodded and took notes, assuring me he'd discreetly track her movements and document any rendezvous. And sure enough, within 2 weeks he delivered plenty of proof. Dozens of photos of Megan and Derek kissing in her car, holding hands at a cafe near her office, even entering a motel off the highway together. The timestamps and reports he provided painted a complete picture of their affair. It was gut-wrenching to read and see. but each new piece of evidence oddly steeled my resolve further. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making this up. They were real, tangible cheaters, and now I had the receipts. With this trove of evidence in hand, I sat down with Miss Patel again to strategize. We could file for divorce at any time now. She assured me that given what we had, we could likely negotiate a very favorable settlement, especially if Megan wanted to avoid these details coming out in court. Hearing that phrase, "avoid these details coming out," sparked something in me. Up until then, I'd been focused on gathering proof mostly for legal and personal vindication. But now, a new facet of revenge glinted. Public exposure. Shame as a weapon. I left Miss Patel's office that day with my next moves decided. The legal groundwork was set. The evidence was airtight. Now I was going to make sure Megan and Derek tasted the full flavor of the hell they'd cooked up, for everyone to see. 3 weeks passed with me living a double life. By day, I was the polite, cheerful husband, acting as if nothing was wrong. By night, I was the architect of their downfall, quietly preparing every detail. It was exhausting, but the anticipation of justice kept me going. When I decided the time was right to confront Megan, I knew I had to do it strategically. An uncontrolled blow-up could backfire. I needed her to feel just safe enough to let her guard down completely. One evening, after dinner, I sat her down in the living room. My heart was jackhammering in my chest, but I took a deep breath and put on my best hurt, vulnerable expression. "We need to talk, Meg," I said quietly, using a soft tone I hadn't in weeks. She muted the TV and looked at me, puzzled by my seriousness. "Sure, honey. What's up?" For a moment, the words caught in my throat. I felt genuine tears of anger and sorrow welling up, but I harnessed them for effect. I pulled out my phone and opened one of the photos I'd taken, the one of her and Derek laughing over dessert. With a trembling hand, I held the phone out to her. Megan's eyes went wide the instant she saw the image. She snatched the phone from my hand for a closer look, then back at me. In that moment, all the color drained from her face. What?" she breathed. "I know, Megan," I said softly, my voice already unsteady. "I know about you and Derek." Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. She realized there was no point in denying the obvious photo. Tears flooded her eyes immediately. "Jack, I'm so sorry," she choked out, reaching for my free hand with both of hers. I pulled away, and she dissolved into sobs. "It was a mistake, a horrible mistake." I let her cry for a moment, my own heart pounding with a mix of real pain and cold determination. Seeing her like this, the woman I loved, on the floor sobbing because she'd betrayed me, it hurt. But I reminded myself I was doing this for a reason. "How long?" I managed to ask, my voice thick. She slid off the couch and onto her knees on the floor in front of me, grasping at my hand desperately. "A few months," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But it didn't mean anything, I swear. I never meant to hurt you. I was stupid and selfish, and I ended it. It's over now. I ended it last week." Her words tumbled out in a frantic rush. I knew that was a lie. The PI's motel photos from just days ago said otherwise, but I didn't challenge it. Not yet. I just let out a shaky sigh, as if crushed. "Why, Megan, was it something I did? Was I not enough for you?" She cried harder, shaking her head vehemently. "No, it wasn't you. You've been wonderful. I have no excuse. I was feeling, I don't know, bored or something, and Derek paid attention to me. He made me feel attractive and exciting, and I was stupid. I didn't think, but I never stopped loving you. She looked up at me, eyes pleading and mascara running. You have to believe me. I love you, Jack. This, this thing with him, it was never about not loving you. I bit down on the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming or laughing bitterly. Instead, I let tears fill my eyes. How can you say you love me and do this? I asked, voice cracking. You broke us, Megan. She dissolved into hysterical sobs, pressing her forehead to the back of my hand. Please, please don't leave me. I'll do anything to fix this. I know I don't deserve it, but if you give me another chance, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. This was the moment. I sniffled, using a real tear that escaped. I don't know, I whispered. I can't even think straight. She crawled up to sit on the couch next to me, still clinging to my hand. Whatever it takes, she vowed. Therapy, quitting my job, never seeing him again. I'll do it. Just please, don't throw away 5 years of marriage for my one stupid mistake. Her eyes were wide and desperate. I allowed a long silence, letting her words hang. Then I nodded slowly, as if conflicted but relenting. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, we can try, but Megan, things have to change. I have conditions. Yes, anything, she said instantly, a spark of hope in her eyes. First, you cut off all contact with Derek. Right now, I said firmly. If I even suspect you're still talking to him, I'm gone. Of course, she stammered. I already told him it was over, but I'll make it clear again. I'll block his number, whatever you want. I want you to text him right now, in front of me, I replied. I needed to see it, and ideally to spook Derek a bit in the process. Megan blinked, clearly not expecting that, but she gave a shaky nod and reached for her phone on the table. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely unlock it. With a wavering voice, she asked, What should I say? Tell him you made a mistake. You love your husband, and you want no further contact, I said coldly. She typed slowly, then angled the phone to show me, Derek, I can't do this anymore. I love my husband, and I'm recommitting to my marriage. Don't ever contact me again. Send it, I said. She pressed send. We both stared at the phone. Within seconds, it buzzed with an incoming call. Derek's name flashed on the screen. She looked at me, alarmed. I took the phone from her hand and answered, putting it on speaker but saying nothing. Megan, what the hell is that text? Talk to me, came Derek's voice, tinny and agitated through the speaker. I spoke, voice low and steady. This isn't Megan. A pause of dead air. Then Derek's voice, wary. Who is this? This is her husband, I said. I heard a sharp intake of breath on his end. Megan won't be talking to you anymore. If you try to contact her again, I will know, and I promise you'll regret it. He began, but I already hung up and blocked his number. My hand was shaking, but I hoped she didn't notice. Megan stared at me, astonished. I handed her back the phone. If he bothers you at work, go to HR, I said. Actually, maybe you should ask to move to a different team, away from him. I will, she agreed quickly. I don't care about him at all, Jack. He means nothing to me. I just want you. Fresh tears glistened on her lashes. I let out a long breath and finally, gingerly, put an arm around her shoulders. I'm so hurt, Megan, I murmured. I don't know how I'll ever trust you again. But I'm willing to try because I swallowed. I still love you. Despite everything. She broke down anew, sobbing into my chest. I held her and gently stroked her hair, wearing the mask of a conflicted man giving his cheating wife a second chance. Inside, I felt almost nothing. Seeing her tears and feeling her cling to me, I expected to feel triumph. Instead, I felt hollow. But I maintained the act, whispering assurances that we'd work through it one day at a time. That night, for the first time in over a month, Megan and I slept in the same bed holding each other. She fell asleep with her head on my chest, her body wrapped around mine as if afraid I'd vanish if she let go. I stared at the ceiling in the darkness, feeling her warmth and weight against me, and felt numb. A part of me wanted to scream at her, shove her off, tell her this was all fake. Another part wanted to break down and weep into her hair, mourning the love that used to live here. But I did neither. I just lay there awake for hours, eyes dry and heart cold. Phase 2 of my plan was underway, feigned forgiveness. I had convinced Megan I was willing to reconcile. She believed, for now, that she'd been spared the worst and that our marriage might recover. That assumption was going to be her undoing. In the days that followed, I played the role of wounded but trying husband to perfection. I suggested we attend marriage counseling. We went to a couple sessions, where I played my part by expressing pain and tentative hope. I insisted on transparency. Megan gave me full access to her phone and accounts without protest. True to her word, she blocked Derek everywhere and avoided him at work. She told me she arranged a transfer to a different project team so she wouldn't report to him. Each night she came home and inundated me with affection I hadn't seen in months, cooking my favorite meals, cuddling up to me on the couch, even initiating sex again after a period of bedroom coldness. I let her, occasionally reciprocating just enough to keep her convinced I was slowly coming around. But in truth, I felt almost nothing during those moments, certainly nowhere near the way I used to feel with her. The betrayal had killed something in me. Megan's guilt made her almost pathetically eager to please. If I came home a bit later than usual, sometimes I did, deliberately, without telling her, I'd find her anxious and relieved when I finally arrived. If I grew quiet and pensive, which was often, as I wasn't about to pretend everything was fine, she'd become immediately concerned, asking if I was okay or if I needed anything. I usually just said I was tired or still hurting and needed time. She'd accept that with a mournful look. Inside, I was still furious and hurt, but I kept a tight lid on it. Occasionally, I'd retreat to the garage or go for a drive alone just to vent my anger where she couldn't see, punching a sack of potting soil, screaming in my car at an empty intersection. But never once did I let it slip in front of her. In front of her, I was the picture of a heartbroken man, tentatively forgiving his wife out of deep love. One night, about a week into our reconciliation, Megan came home from work looking upset. Over dinner, she admitted quietly, "Derek tried to talk to me after a staff meeting today." I felt a flare of anger, but kept my expression concerned. "Oh, what happened?" He cornered me in the hallway and asked if we could speak in private. I told him no, that I have nothing to say to him and he needs to leave me alone, she said, poking at her pasta. Then I walked away. I swear that's all. I didn't engage. I believed her. She seemed genuinely rattled and worried I'd be angry just hearing his name. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for telling me. If he keeps bothering you, maybe you should talk to HR. "I will," she promised. He wasn't happy, but I don't care. I only care about us." She gave me a trembling half-smile. I mustered a small smile back. "That means a lot, Meg." Inside, I was seething that Derek had the nerve to approach her. But I wasn't surprised. A manipulative bastard like him wouldn't surrender his plaything easily. I made a mental note. Once my plan was executed, I'd make sure to expose him at work too. He wouldn't be harassing my wife or anyone else for much longer. Through all of this elaborate charade, I could feel myself changing. The initial agony of discovery had transmuted into something colder and sharper. Each day that I spent pretending to forgive while secretly plotting made me more detached. The man who had adored Megan, who would have moved mountains for her, he was gone. In his place was someone I barely recognized, someone calculating and, frankly, vindictive. I embraced that side of myself for now, because it was what I needed to survive this and come out on top. Megan had no idea. She was fooled by my occasional soft gestures or moments of intimacy, thinking they signaled progress. If anything, her hope and relief made it easier for me to move freely. She wasn't watching her back at all. By the end of that month, I knew the time had come. The final act of my plan was nearly ready, and neither Megan nor Derek had the slightest clue what awaited them. When I decided to execute the final stage of my plan, it was a crisp Monday morning in early fall. The air felt electric with the promise of retribution. Over the weekend, I had quietly moved some personal items and important documents to a storage unit, preparing for the inevitable upheaval. I also had all our evidence neatly organized: photographs, call logs, bank statements showing her affair expenses, even a couple of gushy emails Megan had shown me during our transparency phase, emails she'd written Derek when she was infatuated. I was beyond ready. That morning, Megan left for work with a tentative, sweet peck on my lips. "See you tonight." "I love you," she said softly. I forced a small smile. "Love you too. Have a good day," I replied, trying not to choke on the words. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, my own preparations swung into motion. At 10 a.m., an official process server, arranged through Miss Patel, stepped into the sleek lobby of Megan's office building. Dressed smartly and carrying a manila envelope, he approached reception and asked for her by name. I later heard that Megan was completely caught off guard when she was summoned downstairs and the server handed her the envelope. She likely expected a routine delivery or paperwork, not divorce papers and evidence of her adultery delivered with a blunt, "You've been served." Inside that envelope were the divorce filings, citing irreconcilable differences. As a shock tactic, we had also attached copies of a few key pieces of evidence: printouts of text logs to Derek, a selection of incriminating photos, including one of those grainy restaurant shots of them holding hands. We wanted to make it crystal clear that denial was futile. Also in the packet was a handwritten note from me. "Megan, I know everything. The photos, the lies, all of it. I gave you a chance to come clean, and you chose to deceive me further. Our marriage is over. I have notified those who deserve to know the truth. Do not contact me except through my attorney, Jack." At almost the same moment Megan was staring at those papers in shock, an email went out from my account to a carefully curated list of recipients. Her parents and siblings, my parents, a few of our close mutual friends, and crucially, HR and upper management at her company. I had drafted this email the night before, my hands trembling with adrenaline and a sort of dark satisfaction. I kept the message factual and brief. I explained that I was heartbroken to announce that Megan and I would be divorcing because I discovered she had been having an affair with a man named Derek S., a colleague of hers who was himself married. I wrote that I felt those closest to us deserved honesty rather than a facade, so I couldn't in good conscience hide the reason for our split. To the work recipients, I added that the affair had taken place during work hours and possibly on company premises, so it was a workplace matter as well. I attached a couple of the tamest yet unmistakable photos Dan had taken. One of Megan and Derek kissing in her car at lunchtime, and another of them entering the motel together, captured by Dan from a distance, but clearly them. I also attached a snippet of a gushy text from her to him that I'd found in her deleted messages. Something about, "Can't wait until next time. Love you." It was brutal, but it painted the picture. I hesitated for maybe half a second before hitting send. Then off it went, to dozens of inboxes. There was no going back now. The truth was out, and I controlled the narrative. I didn't stop there. I also ensured Derek's wife, Angela, received a packet of proof at their home that day. She deserved to know the truth about her husband. Using the background information Dan had dug up, I had a courier deliver an anonymous manila envelope to their address that morning, containing printouts of texts and a letter gently informing her of what had been going on, with my contact info if she wanted to discuss. I signed it only as a concerned party who believes you should know. With all these bombs dropped, I sat back and watched the fallout begin. It was almost immediate. By lunchtime, my phone, which I'd set to silent on my desk at work, was lighting up nonstop with incoming texts and calls. I ignored most. However, I allowed myself the grim pleasure of reading the texts as they came in from Megan. First, "Jack, I just got served divorce papers. What is this? Please tell me this is some kind of mistake." A few minutes later, "Oh my God, did you email my HR? Jack, what are you doing?" Then, "Please answer your phone. We can talk about this. You didn't have to do it this way." As I expected, her tone shifted as the shock turned to anger. "How could you humiliate me like this? We were going to work through this, and now you've ruined my life." I just watched the messages roll in, one after another, my expression stony. Her sense of betrayal and outrage made me almost giddy in a dark way. She still didn't get it. She had ruined our life when she chose to cheat. Anything I was doing now was just fallout from her choice. Calls from her came in repeatedly, but I let them all go to voicemail. She left a few tearful messages alternating between apologetic, "I'm so sorry, please, we can still fix this," and furious, "This is cruel and unnecessary. I can't believe you would do this to me." I deleted them without listening fully. Around 1 p.m., I answered one incoming call, Megan's mother. I braced myself. Her mom was sobbing, asking what on earth had happened. Megan had called her, hysterical, saying I was divorcing her and had told everyone about her mistake. Mistake. What a neat word for blowing up a marriage. I calmly explained to my mother-in-law that I was very sorry to involve them, but I thought she and the family deserved to know why our marriage was ending. That I'd discovered Megan's long-running affair, and I couldn't stay with her after that. Her mom sniffled, saying she understood I was hurt, but wishing I'd kept it private. "This is a family matter, Jack. Airing it to the world. It's just not like you." "I hid what I knew for a long time," I replied, perhaps a bit coldly. I protected Megan's reputation while it was me being wronged. I won't lie for her sake anymore. I'm sorry if this has embarrassed you or the family, but I think the embarrassment is hers to bear. Her mom grew quiet at that, then muttered that she couldn't argue with that. She hoped I'd reconsider working things out, said, "You two have something special," but her voice lacked conviction. I politely told her that chapter was closed. We ended the call civilly enough, both of us choking back emotion. I suspect the next call she made was to her daughter, demanding to know the full story. As expected, chaos broke out at Megan's workplace. Later, I got the rundown from one of my sympathetic friends there, who was CC'd on the HR email. Apparently, Megan burst into tears in the middle of the lobby after being served and fled. Derek was called into a meeting with HR that very afternoon, looking pale and shaken. Office gossip spread like wildfire. By the end of the day, everyone knew their star marketing coordinator and a higher-up had been carrying on a tawdry affair. It didn't help Derek's case that word leaked he was married. Folks in the office were disgusted, especially those who'd met me at holiday parties and thought we were a great couple. I can only imagine Derek's own day from hell. He would have returned home to an enraged wife confronting him with the evidence I sent. Indeed, I later got a brief call from Angela. We'd exchanged numbers after she received the package. Her voice trembled with tears, but carried a note of grim resolve as she thanked me for telling her the truth. She said she'd thrown Derek out and would be filing for divorce. Apparently, he'd fed her some BS initially about a crazy coworker having a crush on him when rumors started swirling. But my evidence blew those lies apart. I expressed how sorry I was that she was hurt by our spouse's actions. There was a short, heavy silence, both of us acknowledging each other's pain without saying it. Then we wished each other strength and hung up. Two strangers connected by betrayal. Back at my own home, I had more practical matters to attend to. With Megan at work, or presumably leaving work in shambles, I took the opportunity to change the locks on the house. I had already packed up most of her personal belongings over the weekend. I wasn't about to let an explosive confrontation happen inside. I stacked all her boxes neatly in the garage. I also called up a locksmith to rekey the doors, and by 4 p.m. it was done. My heart was pounding because I knew Megan would soon be on her way home, and this would truly be the final showdown. Around 4:30, I was peering through the front window when I saw her car barreling into the driveway, tires screeching. She stumbled out, clutching the large envelope I'd had delivered, and rushed to the front door. I stood in the foyer, steeling myself. A rattle of keys, then a thump as her key failed to turn the new lock. She tried again, then realized. Bang, bang, bang! She started pounding on the door, voice high and shrill. Jack! Jack! Open the door! We need to talk! The moment of catharsis was here. I took one last breath, then opened the door. Megan stood on the step with wild, red-rimmed eyes. Mascara streaked her cheeks. She looked as if she'd been crying nonstop. In her arms, she clutched the divorce papers and evidence packet, now crumpled from her grip. I stepped out, calmly pulling the door shut behind me. I didn't want her coming inside. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to appear composed even as my heart thumped with adrenaline. "What do you want, Megan?" I asked, voice flat. She stared at me as if I were a stranger. In a cracked whisper, she asked, "Why? Why are you doing this? We were going to be okay. We were fixing it." Her voice broke on a sob. I felt a surge of anger at her audacity. "Really? You're asking me why?" I said, ice in my tone. "Megan, you cheated on me for months. You lied to my face over and over, that's why." She shook her head desperately, tears spilling anew. "But you said you forgave me," she whimpered. "You said we'd work through it. I thought we were okay." "No, we were not okay," I snapped. "I gave you a chance. Hell, I gave you multiple chances to tell me the truth. You kept lying. I pretended to forgive you so you wouldn't see this coming." Realization dawned on her face. The horror in her eyes would have been almost pitiable to me once. You were pretending? This whole time?" she croaked. My silence was answer enough. She covered her mouth, a moan of anguish escaping. "Oh my God!" A flicker of guilt tugged at me. This was a woman I'd loved deeply, now utterly broken. But I hardened myself. She chose this. "I begged you to work it out," she said, voice rising. "I would have done anything to fix it, Jack. And you just played me. How could you be so cruel? I let out a short, bitter laugh. Cruel? You think I'm cruel? I hissed. What's cruel was you sleeping with another man while I was breaking my back to provide for us. What's cruel was making me think I was the problem, while you snuck around with him. Don't you dare lecture me on cruelty, Megan. She flinched. Then anger sparked through her grief. Fine. I screwed up. I was selfish and stupid, and I don't deserve you. But you plotted this whole thing like some kind of psychopath. She gestured wildly with the envelope. You could have just divorced me quietly, Jack. Instead, you humiliated me in front of everyone. My family, my job. I've lost everything now, thanks to you. I felt a grim smile tug at my mouth. No, Megan. You lost everything thanks to you. I didn't cheat. I didn't throw away our marriage. You did that. Actions have consequences. What? Did you think I'd just sign papers and let you carry on with your life, reputation intact? Not a chance. She began to sob again, shoulders shaking. What am I going to do? She keened softly. I have nowhere to go, no job, no you. It was true. She was being suspended at work pending investigation of the affair, so I'd heard. And Derek was likely getting fired. She really had burned down her comfortable life. I ought to feel sorry, but all I could summon was a cold sense of justice. You made your choices, I said quietly. Maybe you'll think twice before you betray someone's trust again. She cried harder. I know I hurt you. I know. And I'm sorry, she sobbed. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I never thought you'd do all this. I never thought I meant so little to you that you'd just destroy me. That hit a nerve. My voice rose. Meant so little? God, Megan, I loved you more than anything. I would have done anything for you. And you tossed me aside for some thrill with a coworker. You're really going to stand here and act like you're the victim, that I'm cruel for not quietly sweeping your affair under the rug? She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing she had no moral high ground. Instead, she pivoted to raw pleading. Please, please, Jack, she whispered. Don't do this. We can still— We're done, I interrupted firmly. It's too late. I've already filed the papers. I've moved my money. I've told the people who matter. There's no going back. A long silence stretched between us, broken only by her sniffling. Finally, she wiped her face and squared her shoulders a little. A flash of bitterness crossed her features. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. You got your revenge. You've left me with nothing. I simply gazed back, impassive. You left me with nothing the moment you betrayed me, I replied. Her eyes flicked toward the garage. I knew she saw the stack of boxes visible through the side door window. So, that's it, she murmured. You've packed up my life and kicked me out. I nodded. Your things are all there. You should take them and go before it gets dark. You can stay with your parents or a friend. But you're not staying here. The house was mine before we married, and it'll be mine after. I've changed the locks. We have nothing left to discuss except the legal details, and your lawyer can handle that with mine. Megan looked utterly defeated. She stared at the envelope in her arms, the physical proof of her ruined world, and then back at me. Her voice was a hoarse whisper. I really am sorry, Jack, for all of it. I nodded once, a curt, almost civil gesture. I'm sorry, too. Sorry you weren't the person I thought you were. That made her break into quiet tears again. Clutching the envelope, she turned slowly and walked toward the garage. I stood on the porch and watched as she opened the garage door. saw the piles of neatly labeled boxes containing her clothes, toiletries, personal items. She covered her face with a hand, shoulders shaking. For a brief instant, I almost wavered. This felt like kicking a wounded animal, but then I reminded myself of the nights I agonized alone while she laughed with him, of the lies upon lies. She wasn't a wounded innocent. She was reaping exactly what she'd sown. Megan loaded as many boxes as she could into her car. I didn't offer to help. When she was done, she closed the trunk and stood there for a moment looking at our house, the house we'd made a home, where we shared so many memories. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard. She looked up at me on the porch, and I could see the realization in her eyes that this was likely the last time she'd ever be here, the last time she'd see me like this. "I loved you," she called softly, voice hitching. "Despite everything, I do love you." My throat tightened. I had no answer for that. I just stood like a statue as she finally got into her car. With a shuddering breath, she started the engine. I watched from the porch as Megan, my wife, my partner of 7 years, the woman I once thought I'd grow old with, backed out of the driveway and disappeared down the street, the last glow of sunset reflecting off her rear window. When her car's taillights vanished, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the porch step, face in my hands, and just trembled for a moment. It was over. Really over. I won't lie. I felt a profound sense of relief, but also a deep, sorrowful loss. The person I'd loved was gone, by her own hand, and I had raised the earth so nothing of our life together remained but ashes. It was what I set out to do, and I accomplished it. But it was not joyous. It was just necessary. After a few minutes, I stood and went inside, into my quiet house. The silence inside was heavy, but also oddly peaceful without the constant tension. The knot of dread that had lived in my gut for weeks was finally gone. I knew there were still hard days ahead. Lawyers, finalizing the divorce, dealing with residual gossip. But the worst was behind me. In the weeks that followed, the dust settled slowly. The divorce process was surprisingly quick and uneventful, mostly because Megan didn't fight it. She essentially surrendered. Through our lawyers, she agreed to a settlement heavily skewed in my favor. I kept the house. It had been mine before marriage anyway, inherited from my granddad. We split what little savings remained, and she waived any claim to my retirement account. She didn't ask for alimony, likely because she knew an adultery expose in court would destroy any chance at it, and perhaps out of genuine remorse. True to my word, I haven't spoken to Megan directly since that day on the porch. Any necessary communication went through lawyers. Our divorce was finalized a couple months ago, quietly in a judge's chamber. Just like that, 5 years of marriage officially ended. Word of what happened spread among our friends and family. There was plenty of shock, and as expected, lines were drawn. A few mutual friends cut ties with Megan entirely. They were so disgusted by what she did, they couldn't even look at her. Some tried to stay neutral at first, but naturally drifted more to my side as Megan withdrew out of embarrassment. Her best friend Kim still stuck by her, though Kim told me once, awkwardly, that even she was having trouble reconciling the Megan she knew with Megan's actions. My own friends were wholly supportive of me, some outright gleeful that I gave that cheater what she deserved, though I didn't care for the gloating much. I wasn't proud of deriving satisfaction from someone's downfall, even if they earned it. Megan stayed with her parents for a while after moving out. Eventually, I heard through the grapevine that she got a new job in a different city and moved there, probably hoping for a fresh start where people didn't know her story. I doubt it was easy. Our hometown is small enough that rumors follow, and her professional reputation took a hit after the HR investigation. Derek, as far as I know, lost his high-paying job and his marriage in one fell swoop. Last I heard, he moved out of state, presumably finding employment where his name wasn't mud. They both paid steep prices for their fling. Am I happy about that? I wouldn't say I celebrate it, but I am satisfied that neither Megan nor Derek got off easy. They didn't get to ride into the sunset while I quietly nursed a broken heart. In that sense, justice was served. As for me, well, life goes on. The first few weeks after everything went down, I often felt strangely empty. The adrenaline of orchestrating revenge had kept me going. Once it was over, I had to face the grief. There were nights I still woke up reaching across the bed for her, only to remember she was gone and why. I'd lie there in the dark, feeling the weight of loneliness and betrayal, and it hurt like hell. But day by day, it got better. I threw myself into work at the garage, picked up extra shifts. I started hitting the gym again, channeling any remaining anger into pumping iron. My buddies made a point to drag me out to ball games and fishing trips, reminding me I wasn't alone and that life still had plenty to offer. My family hovered with concern for a while, but I assured them I was all right, and in time they believed it. I even saw a therapist for a short while, just to talk it all through with someone objective and ensure I wouldn't carry permanent bitterness. It helped more than I expected. I needed to hear that it was okay to feel both vindicated and sorrowful, that I could both love the person Megan once was and hate what she did. Slowly, I've been making peace with it. Do I regret anything? Sometimes, in my more reflective moments, I wonder if scorched earth revenge was the right approach. Perhaps I could have simply ended things quietly and tried to retain some civility. But then I recall those images of her with him, the cavalier way they made a fool of me, and any second-guessing fades. I know myself. Had I let them off lightly, the injustice would have eaten me alive. This way, when I closed the chapter on us, I did it knowing they felt at least some measure of the pain they caused. I don't regret that. I'm not the same man I was before. There's a hardness in me now that wasn't there, a guardedness when it comes to trusting others. But there's also a strength. I stood up for myself. I didn't crumble. I took the worst thing that ever happened to me and handled it on my terms. That's something no one can take away. Not everyone agrees with how I handled it. I'm aware some onlookers think I went too far. Maybe you reading this do too. That's fine. All I can say is, you can't truly judge the choices of a betrayed heart unless you've worn those shoes. I didn't plan to become a vengeful man. I was driven to it by the betrayal I endured. And honestly, I can live with that. Megan once wrote in an anniversary card that I was the best thing that ever happened to her. Ironically, she didn't act like it. In the end, she treated me as disposable. I've accepted that for whatever reasons or flaws in her. She wasn't who I thought she was. I don't hate her anymore. I feel mostly indifference now, with a tinge of sadness for the good times that were real. I'll never forgive her, though. That part of me is dead, and I'm okay with that. Nowadays, I come home from work to a peaceful, if quiet, house. No secrets lurking in its corners, no simmering distrust. Just me and the hard-won peace of knowing I survived the worst storm of my life and came out the other side. I cook dinner for one. I watch whatever I want on TV. I sleep diagonally in my bed if it suits me. It's not the life I planned, and sometimes the loneliness hits. But then I remind myself, I'm free. I wake up without that weight on my chest, without that gnawing suspicion in my gut. That feeling is worth everything. Revenge, as they say, doesn't truly undo the hurt. It doesn't bring back the love you lost or erase the betrayal. This is true, but revenge did give me closure and balance the scales. It ensured that those who hurt me faced consequences, and that I wasn't left carrying the pain in silence while they carried on smugly with their lives. For me, that's made it easier to heal and move forward. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I'll meet someone new, someone who values loyalty the way I do, and I'll cautiously try this whole love thing again. Or maybe I'll stay solo for a good long while, enjoying the drama-free solitude and learning to be happy on my own. Right now, I'm okay either way. What I do know is that when I look in the mirror, I see a man who, despite being deeply wounded, refused to be a victim. I see someone who took back power and self-respect. I lost a lot, my marriage, my naive trust. But I gained something too. The certainty that I will never let myself be betrayed like that again without delivering consequences. As I lock up the house each night, stepping through quiet rooms that once rang with laughter and love, I feel that bittersweet calm. The war is over. The wounds are healing. Justice, in its own way, was served. And I can finally, truly begin to heal.